Hey everyone, welcome to Comic Essay. This is Sean here, and today we're going to be looking at Justice League title issue 16. Before we jump into this, the last video on this issue 15 was a mess, but that's because we're dealing with time travel basically. So the way I've split it up and the way I want to split up just this series of stories where we're dealing with the Timeless and the Justice League is actually just to just to split it up in such a way that we understand what's going on with each, and because we're going to be visiting 5 different timelines throughout this whole story arc. So let's first pick up with Batman. So I don't think we basically knew how Batman got the message and so on, and how he got Superman to the Infinity Corporation building at the beginning of the last issue, but we're given that backstory here. So basically, we pick up with Batman at the Infinity Corporation, all right, and they received the message ultimately, all right. So the Infinity Corporation received the message from the Stones as well as from Molly, who we saw from the last issue, that the Timeless are coming, that an entity that's very powerful is coming, and they're coming to erase time ultimately, right? History will be erased and be rewritten. The Infinity Corporation has never dealt with this entity, and neither has the Justice League. But it's not necessarily that they need Batman's help, they need Superman's help. So they need Superman to be convinced to come to the Infinity Corporation building. Hence, we see Batman giving a signal to Superman for him to leave his family and come over. All right. So the gist of this is that Batman doesn't know what's going on. And from my understanding, he does know these people from the Infinity Corporation from some point. So they mention that they helped to defeat Ra. And in my head and in my history of DC, Ra was a Kryptonian god, like a deity that wanted to take over Earth. But I'm not sure how that happened, and I'm not sure where that even fell into the storyline. But this seems like people like we've seen before, and that Batman seems to understand and know of. And so that's Batman, and that's basically pre the whole issue 15, just to give some background. So we jump to Aquaman. So with Aquaman, it's very basic, all right? So what the Timeless are doing, what we see the Timeless are doing, the Timeless are these beings that are coming to rewrite history. What they're doing, they are intervening at 5 different points of history, whether in the past, the present, or the future. They're trying to rewrite it, and it's times in history where great power came into the earth, right? We're going to get this message later on from Molly, but we need to describe this and discuss this now, because we need to understand why we're picking up with different heroes at different places. So Aquaman was obviously sent back in time, which I believe is 47,000 years before the present day time, all right, to a time in Atlantis, all right. So it seems to be a special day in Atlantis. He gets to explain to the rest of Atlantis who he is, that he's time traveled, that he's here, and the king of the time and the queen of the time don't think it's a coincidence. For them, they're celebrating the queen's birth of 2 twins that's coming up. And so what they did, they had carved out the zodiac crystals. So the zodiac crystals are something that we saw in the beginning of Justice League. They helped to actually save the world. So, but it's also a time, but the main point of this is that when these zodiac crystals were created, this is a time period in Atlantis where huge amounts of magic was at its peak at the end of the day, all right? The next people we pick up with is Jessica and Simon, the Green Lantern, Simon Baz. And they've been knocked 500 years into the future, and they're currently in Washington, D.C. So here it is. So what happens is that in this time period, the world, I said last week in the last video that the world seems to be desolate and destroyed, which it was. So what happened was that they are met with a Green Lantern corpse, basically, but it's slightly different to the green the Green Lanterns that we currently know. So as they met with the arrival of these Green Lanterns of Earth, they are under the impression that Jessica and Simon are using Green Lantern light unauthorized. They just don't know that they're from a different time period. It does seem like Jessica and Simon here seem to be more skilled as Green Lanterns. So these earthly Green Lanterns, I believe they're known as an Earth Corps of Green Lanterns. They are just not as skilled. Well, they're lacking, I guess, they're not as good as veterans and as using the Green Lantern light. So once Simon and Jessica take them out real quick, I guess they get to an understanding and they get taken to the home base. So what's happened now is that So what's happening now is that they find out that there's a power battery sitting on Earth in this time. How this is happening, we don't know. From what we understand, the Guardians don't care that this power battery is here. Simply for the only reason is because what happened is the power plagues came and infected Earth. So it was a worldwide infection, right? So the whole Earth had to be quarantined. The thing is that the Green Lanterns decided to stay on Earth. Right, the Green Lanterns that were protecting Earth sector, which is 2814, and since they're protecting this sector, they weren't able to get the Green Lantern light from Oa wasn't able to stretch that far, especially to a quarantine planet. So they had to build their own power battery, and that is basically the gist of why. This is a huge amount of power that is coming here on the Earth, right? And Molly describes this as she sends out a broadcast to everyone, basically, in these 5 different times. And she sends out this broadcast as she sent it out to the Infinity Corporation, to Batman, and to Superman. She also sends out this broadcast to the Green Lanterns saying, you're here, and you're here because this is also a great time in the timeline of Earth where huge amounts of power come upon the Earth, right? So, and then we get to, and the next point I want to get to is quickly to Wonder Woman. So as Molly is describing this to everyone, she describes it to everyone separating their 5 different timelines, all right? So even with Wonder Woman, she says, you've been sent to this place. Why? Because with Greek mythology, what happened was the Titans existed in the beginning, all right? So there's the Titans and Kronos and he was the father of all the Titans. But what he did was that he had kids, his kids being Zeus, Poseidon, Hades, and so on. And now what has happened is that there was a time period when the Titans, Kronos, all right, this is just Greek mythology, just to bring everyone up to speed. Kronos started eating, he started absorbing his children in order to get their power. All right, and this is where Wonder Woman is at. She's with Zeus right now, and this is the time when the Olympians came into power. All right, because obviously the Olympians are supposed to defeat Kronos, and they are supposed to take over Mount Olympus and so on, and reign as gods. So this is also a significant time period that we're seeing that Wonder Woman is being sent to. All right. The same thing with the Flash. The Flash, when he created the Speed Force, when lightning struck him, when he was surrounded by chemicals, he created the Speed Force, and this is when the Speed Force came into effect on Earth. All right. And where Cyborg was transported to the 30th, or in last issue it was the 31st century, but he was transported to a time period where every other world that had great power found its home on Earth. All right, so we see that Earth is now an amalgamation of not just humans, but also highly intellectual beings that came from across the universe. All right, so Molly's just saying this is why the timeless have come to erase and rewrite these points of history, because these are obviously points of history with great power that that the timeless are just not fond of. We'll find out later why they want to rewrite this. Okay, and then we pick up with Superman. So here's the thing with Superman just wants one thing. Superman just wants his wife and his son, right? And what the Infinity Corporation come up with, they're saying like, listen, we don't think we can help you, because number one, this is like a wave, this is a storm that we're riding just to get to this point. We got to this point, and it's a storm in terms of time, because how time works in the DC universe is that almost as a rhythm, as a beat. So the timeless are working at a certain beat and they can see throughout all of time, like their minds are linked throughout all of time. So it's also very hard to attack an enemy that can see you coming from the past and from the future and from the present, right? So this is number one. This is the first thing. And the second thing, the Infinity Corporation can't help Batman and Superman get to the other Justice Leaguers, because right now time is being messed around with so much that they could, it's almost like they're trying to say like, okay, we're going to set the rhythm of this machine, of this building, to the 1600s. But because time is being rewritten and being erased, if you think about it as a timeline, time will move up according to those beats. Hence, they might find themselves in the 17th century instead of the 16th century. All right. So this is the biggest issue. So Superman just has one idea, all right? He's just like, listen, there needs to be something we can do, all right? Not only that, Superman and Batman knows that time is being altered, right? Because even the people here at the Infinity Corporation, they know that Superman is not the same Superman from this Earth. We know from the New 52 that the New 52 Superman has died, and the pre-New 52 Superman that everyone knows and loves has come to this time period, right? With this is the whole thing about DC Rebirth. So Superman is thinking, I think these timeless people might be the reason why time is being stolen and things are being moved around. Batman as well, he's also, because he's a detective, he also thinks so as well. Though he doesn't like the fact that the Infinity Corporation are not able to divulge all the information that they can about themselves, because he does find them suspicious. And you read that throughout the whole comic. So basically, Superman just has one idea. He's just like, listen, I'm just going to go to the temporal, and this is the key thing. So the key thing is that the temporal core is exactly where all the energy from the timeless is coming from, all right? So the point of the timeless is that they want to use the energy from these 5 different points in time and use it to power up and erase and rewrite history, all right? But all of that is controlled at the temporal core. So Superman says, I'm just going to go to the temporal core. I'm going to be very direct. So he gets out of the Infinity Corporation building, flies out. He's obviously met with the Timeless as an army, but in his boldness, being Superman who he is, which in my thinking, I wouldn't want to take on Superman. No, considering that he is the most powerful being, and we're talking about the most powerful being amongst like other superheroes and probably most other villains that we've ever seen. I think if you think about it, Superman is your go-to guy when you need the through ball, when you need the match to be won, when you need the last minute, the last second shot to be taken. Superman's your guy, all right? He's always your clutch guy. He's the best, basically. So he's met with the army. He says, listen, I can fight you, but I really don't recommend it. I came here to talk. So the army of the Timeless obviously stands down. And this is where we're met with we're here at the temporal core, and we see where this is not the temporal core, but we're met with the mind and the head honcho of the Timeless. His name is Tempest, all right? And we'll get into actually who this guy is and what's really going on. And that's about it. Truthfully, I think the story is just a bit crazy considering it has to deal with time, but I understand the theme that's happening here. With Jeff Johns' run of DC Rebirth, as well as with Superman and so on, we can see that everything is leading up to Doomsday, but the Justice League in its totality is just going through multiple scenarios, because I believe everyone is just trying to find out why is time being messed up constantly, whether it's the Timeless or whether it's someone else, but what's going on with the Earth, because obviously something significant, and we know what that's leading up to. That's November when Doomsday comes out, and a lot of answers get answered, a lot of questions get answered about Dr. Manhattan and the Watchmen. So please, if you like this video, please like it, please subscribe, and I'll catch you guys later. Also, please let me know if you like the format of how this is getting done and what else you'd like to see and hear about, and we can make content about that. Cool.